Here we go now.
Good evening, and thank you for joining the Lynn Show Goes Global. This is season 3, and we're in the midst of a world tour of our friends, young Jewish professionals from around the world. And in this particular episode, we're going home. We're going to be with our friends in Israel on this auspicious time right before Pesach, Passover, and the story of our history coming out of Egypt and making it to the land of Israel, mimicked again 80 years ago of Jews coming out of the ashes of Auschwitz, and in 1948 establishing the state of Israel and watching it flourish the way it is. If you have any sense of history, of historical perspective, of prophetic, culmination and absolute miracle, then the Israel that we have today is indeed that miracle. It's a miracle in the short time frame of 80 years post-Holocaust. It's a miracle in the 3,500-year Jewish history since the exodus from Egypt. It is an absolute, utter miracle. And so tonight we're going to try in our cute, special way to have a conversation with two Israelis that come on and represent 6.8 million Jews of Israel somehow. It's easier when we have a show about Jews in Germany. We really feel like we're getting a representation of the Jews like there and in Buenos Aires. In Israel, it's different. Thankfully, it's different because we're home. So we have to. We'll talk a little bit about that and get into it and sort of just if you're listening to this before Pesach, I guess use it as an idea. Like this should be a experience, an echo, a resonance of the great Jewish journey back to our homeland. The work is not done. We've got a lot of work to do still, but we are there, and we are there in a major way, and the world is totally obsessed with us, as we know. So we'll get into those tonight with our guests. Looking forward to half an hour of really great conversation and insights. So thank you for joining. First, what I'd like to do, though, we usually do a segment called "The News of the Jews in Said Country." So roll the intro to that, and then we'll see where we go from there. Yeah, it's hard to pick something out, the history of the Jews. We shouldn't need a lesson of the history of the Jews in Israel. So I'm assuming that we don't need that full lesson. I'll give you a couple of little tidbits to think about that maybe you didn't know. In 1799, Napoleon, at the eastern point of his empire, laid siege. Actually, one of our guests tonight is from Haifa. In 1799, he came up from Egypt and conquered Haifa and laid siege on Akko. Accra, as it was called, Akko today, and lost. He was fought back there, and they lost. And in the lead up to that, Napoleon, in his vision of conquering the East, had conquered. He said that he basically would be an Italian to rule the Italians and a Muslim to rule of Egypt and the Muslims. And he was saying, yes, and to be able to be my kind of ruler over the Jewish people, I want them to prosper as Jews. I want them to see me as a harbinger of great Jewish triumph. And he said, I want to rebuild the Temple of Solomon. And I want to reestablish the Sanhedrin, the great Jewish court of Europe, which he did actually try to do. Very fascinating, though. Had he won that war and had Napoleon taken over, he wanted all the Jews of Asia and Europe and Africa to come and moved to Palestine, moved to Israel. What would that have looked like? Also in 1948, we know what happened with the independence of Israel, of course, but there were other factions that believed that we shouldn't be running the show there, that the Jews should be allowed to come and live there, but it should be under Jordanian rule, like the water, electricity, and things like that, and security should all be handled by the Jordanians, but the Jews should be allowed, they want the United Nations to be allowed to live there and to come and to celebrate their Jewish identity there, separate from an international identity, political identity. Something to think about what that would have looked like. And today we have 6,870,000 something Jews population in Israel, total population over 9 million people. But what's unique about that is that we're almost very close, and Corona is pushing us there. We're close to tipping the 50%, the halfway mark of Jewish world population living in Israel, which actually has ramifications in some Jewish customs in terms of things that we do with mitzvot that pertain to the land of Israel. And there are certain things which some of our sages and and halachic authorities over the years said changes when the majority of the Jewish people live in Israel, and we're almost there. Okay, that's a little bit of a little history or future lesson about Jews in the land of Israel. So let us introduce our guests tonight, two fine Jews from Tel Aviv and Haifa that are going to represent 6,870,000 Israelis. Okay, for our conversation, we're going to have Omer Meron. He's a mechanical engineer at Kornit Digital in Tel Aviv. He's connected to our Olami organization there called Nefesh Yehudi and the head of the leadership program. And he's a project manager for them as well. He's a mechanical engineer for medical companies in the Israeli army, of course, from 2008 to 2012 in intelligence and the first commander for 10 months. And he loves podcasts and theological debates, history, politics, Bible stories. And he loves classical music, hates crowded places and rock concerts, but he would rather be home watching Quentin Tarantino film, which we're going to have to talk about, of course. And so we're happy to have him representing Tel Aviv with us tonight. And joining Omer in a moment will be Shani Kazaz. Shani Kazaz works for the Fatal hotel chain. I think she was involved in the beginning of it. So the business development of that in Central Israel region. And she was a flight attendant for El Al and involved also with Nefesh Yehudi in the leadership program. And she speaks many, many languages, and including German and French, English, of course. And hobbies, she loves movies before COVID and the beach, of course. She's from Haifa, coffee shops, as anyone would do in Israel, and fashion. And we're really happy to have our guests and bring them on. Omer and Shani, welcome to New York. Thanks for joining. Hi, Shani. Hi, Omer.
Hi, shalom.
Nice to
Shalom,
meet you.
shalom, shalom. Welcome.
Thanks
welcome.
for inviting us.
Yes, excellent. So you have a lot on your shoulders. You have to represent 6,870,000 Israelis, or just the young professionals. But, this is a different kind of conversation that we've had with Jews around the rest of the world. And hopefully everyone who's watching or listening to this feels at home speaking to Israelis and feels at home because they've been there. And if you haven't, please get in touch with us because we're going to make sure you find when the skies open again, if they're not already, but when the skies open, we're gonna do everything we can to get you there. And great. So thanks for joining us, Shani. מאוד מעניין, very interesting. First of all, we the people who are listening or watching should know the three of us have actually met in person before in Spain. We're all part of Olami, and our journey took us to Toledo together, and we were able to sit in schmooze and have a cup of espresso and talk about life there in person. I look forward to doing that again. Shani, tell us. You're in obviously the concierge business of hotels, and as an El Al stewardess, what's the most memorable experience being an El Al stewardess to American Jews who go on birthright? Like your first real exposure to Israel chutzpah, and the Israeli woman is that El Al stewardess. We all have those moments. Give us a great story from that time in your life.
Well, I can just tell you about the day flights from Tel Aviv to New York. It's 007, and it's like flying Bate Knesiot,
right?
Because it means having three tefillot, three prayers on the same plate. So you have more prayers than anything else. You can hardly serve food or anything because people are standing, and at the Shmona Esrei you can't move.
Yeah.
So those flights are very memorable for me.
not in a good way. But I would like to think though, no matter what the religious persuasion of the Sevet, of the staff there, you probably felt those flights were pretty safe. You have to admit, right?
Definitely.
Okay, good. And on behalf of all religious Jews that choose to pray in standing up in the aisles, I apologize for their rudeness. Okay. But I
always understood what it's about, and I always explained it to tourists that were a minority on plane. You have to explain why do people do that? Why do they block the toilet? Why do they have to stand now and not to move? So I think I did a good job explaining.
Okay, you're a good ambassador. I have to do that also. And you speak German. It's interesting. I was once on a flight to Germany, and this happened also, and because I speak German also, I had to be the spokesperson to try and explain why they need to pray, even though I was trying to convince the Jews not to pray. They should pray in their seats. But okay, that's a separate story. But I do remember beautifully, on El Al, you can order glatt kosher food, If you want to be glatt kosher, otherwise the food is kosher. And only in El Al, when I ordered my glatt kosher food and the meal, I wasn't registered, when the meal didn't come, the steward starts yelling at me, this one's kosher enough. He's yelling at me, take this. No, you only get that on El Al. Thank God. It's a great place to be.
It's called special kosher meal.
Yes, special kosher. The trick is, by the way, when you order special kosher, you get your meal first. Okay, great. Anyway, Shani, thank you for joining us. Omer, why you like Quentin Tarantino films? Okay, I can understand. I can understand that. And classical music for you. Are you a musician yourself, Omer?
I'm trying very hard to be.
Okay, in COVID, you have a lot of time on your hands. You could do that.
Not necessarily.
Right. And you live in Shani lives in Haifa. Omer, you live in Tel Aviv, downtown Tel Aviv, right in the center.
Yeah, a bit south of the center, close to Israeli buildings.
Great. And describe what you do for your profession. Is a mechanical engineer at Kornit Digital? What does that entail?
Yeah, so my educational background is a mechanical engineer, but my current position is a system engineer at Kornit Digital. Very famous, becoming more and more famous Israeli company that develops and sells digital printing solution for the textile industry. So anything from t-shirts, hats, shoes, curtains, maps, dresses. We take the raw material of the textile and we give it colors and sell it all around the world.
And what's on the horizon? What's the new technology? What's the future hold in that industry?
So we have a lot of plans for smarter and smarter machines, automation plans, 3D printing, more vivid pigments. We're gonna host the Tel Aviv Fashion Week in the beginning of March.
Shani likes fashion a lot.
It's gonna be interesting.
Make sure Shani's invited to that. She likes fashion.
You are invited. Yeah, you can be my +1.
Oh, wow. Okay, see, that'd be great. Beautiful. So we want to talk a few things tonight. We want to talk about COVID because that's the subject everyone's dealing with, and then a little bit about young professional Jewish life in Israel. Okay, and we'll start with COVID though first. Obviously, in the news in America, we've heard about the remarkable vaccine rollout there, and we had our share of a few anti-Semitic incidents that have cropped up in mainstream television in America about that. But of course, the lockdowns. I have 2 kids living in Israel now. The lockdowns have been intense. Give us your experience. Israel has had a very extreme, I think, position during COVID. It's either been an extreme seger lockdown, more than other countries that we hear about. In the beginning, they were doing extremely well in terms of the numbers, and then it got really super bad, and then it's locked down and super tight. And then, but the vaccines are now even. Nothing's normal in Israel. It's very extreme. If you notice that, you're a bunch of extreme people over there, with small, yamin, right, left. So
what's new?
Yeah, what's new, right? Tell us a little bit about your experience there during COVID. What's unique from your perspective? Shani, we'll start with you.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm working for the hospitality industry.
Yeah, getting crushed.
Which was crushed and suffered a really bad hit. I've been actually on a leave of absence for the past 11 months, so it's practically me being unemployed.
Wow.
So yeah, it's going on. In 2 weeks, it's going to be a full year of being at home, not working. Definitely a huge challenge, personal and social one.
I don't want to make you feel bad. We have a nice picture of you at your job. We'll show it now. I don't want to rub it in, but you're going to go back to work there when things open up again.
Hopefully, but it keeps being postponed because even if Israel will get back to some kind of normality, we're waiting for the incoming tourism, which will take much more than a while for now.
Right.
So
I'm waiting to come. As soon as I can get there, I'm coming, Shani. You put me up in a hotel room as soon as I get there.
Of course, VIP.
We keep pushing our trips, but it must be very hard. Your industry is hit very, very in Israel. So much of the economy is built on tourism. It's crazy.
Yes. What's really worse is the uncertainty, the not knowing when will we be back to work. Lots of people, of course, left already and were fired because you can't bring everybody back because you have to tight everything up and So.
Well, for you. I'm glad you're at least in at the beginning, so you have some stake in building the hotel chain. But yeah, very, very, very hard, very hard. Omer, what's the experience been like for you?
Yeah, you mentioned before that we're representing 6-7 million Jews, and I'm not sure that in this particular topic I'm a good representative because I like COVID time. I mean, you have more time to watch Quentin Tarantino films. You have more time to play the guitar. You're staying at home.
He didn't
I
make
have a
enough
lot.
films to last an entire year. Okay.
Yeah, but that's the thing about his films. You can watch it over and over and over again. No, I'm sure that there's a lot of difficulty coping with this COVID. But I think something about what Shani mentioned before, it's full of uncertainty. And once you realize that it's out of your hands, so I think they say in the Gemara, "En gibor kemityaesh." So you're releasing the willing to control things,
Right.
and you're just reacting, hopefully in a good manner to the things that come.
Right. And have you noticed, is anything that you noticed unique about Israelis? We know Israelis are sabras. They're tough on the outside. Some of them are sweet on the inside. That's what they say. No, they're all sweet on the inside and tough on the outside. The chutzpah we know is unique. There's no place in the world that has, especially Shani knows from El Al, right? Is there something unique you feel about, like, have your friends, really people been compliant or defiant? Have they gone along with the segger and the lockdowns, or is everyone like just typical Israeli? I do my own thing. I don't listen to the memshalah. How's that been, Shani?
Well, I can tell you that in a short sentence. It's a short joke. The first quarantine was the Oraita. The second one was the Rabbanan. And the third one was just the Minag. So I think it started...
The first one was like it was written in the Torah. The second one was like the rabbis came along and did something afterwards. The third one, it was just an old custom.
Right. Okay, so I think it probably sums it up. Like the normal Israelis, at first they were very compliant. But then things got loose, It didn't stay that way. The last quarantine was hardly a quarantine at all. Right. And now you can feel the Israeliness and the chutzpah and the non-compliance, yeah.
And Omer, did you feel like in Tel Aviv, especially with B'nai B'rith, such a strong religious community, has COVID intensified tensions between the religious community, who clearly responded very differently at times to the Seger? Has that tension been really felt by you, or is that something just the news picks up over here?
I think it definitely has been felt and broadcast by the media and by the newspapers because that's their job. But I'm not sure that the individuals themselves feel that. I think that Israelis overall showed great compassion and patience to each other, especially during the quarantine times. And we'll see. I don't know. It's a difficult question. The tension between religious people and secular people in Israel is always there. And once a tiny reason appears for discussing about it, then everybody jumps on it. But I'm not sure it really affects the individual emotions.
Right. Well,
but I have to say that I think Omer is very optimistic, because I feel really different. I feel the media fueled hatred. There's no other way saying it, because it was on the news so many times, all those intersectorial issues in Israel. So putting it top news is an agenda of hatred. So I feel like the social media definitely contributed to it. I hope that Omer is right and the individuals feel otherwise.
Yeah, I hope. I was momentarily mollified to hear that Israelis kind of had a little more patience for each other during COVID. It would take a global pandemic to do that. But
yeah, we are very unified during wars and pandemic times.
Right. I actually remember one time one of my most beautiful Israel stories is I was in a taxi. So the Tel Aviv taxi driver came to Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, for something, and he needed a ride. Well, he'll get a ride, but so I got in. He didn't know where he was going because he never, in a million years, very secular, would never come to Jerusalem unless he had to, and he was stuck there. And he started a fight with me. I'm a religious guy. He started in, and we're yelling at each other, yelling. like literally going at it. I'm in people don't know this. In Israel, you sit in the front seat of the taxi. Okay, so you're right there, and we're literally like at each other's throats. And at that moment, the pagua, the suicide attack at the Dolphinarium went, and within 1 second, we went from being total enemies in philosophy and life, and then really taking it very personally, to sharing a cigar, sitting there and just listening to the news like we were brothers, like we never left each other's side. It is an amazing thing. So Israelis are incredible like that in moments of war and in moments of difficulty. And I do hope it doesn't take long. You're right, Shani. Like in a few minutes, we get back to our old self very quickly. But hopefully there's what we call a silver lining. Let's talk a little bit towards the end now about young Jewish life there. Okay, so the cafes in Tel Aviv, there's nothing like it in the world. I'm sure they're good in Haifa also. Before I became religious, I went to Israel. I stayed in Ramat HaSharon with friends and family there. And my parents had to drag me back because that was it. I was staying. I was never leaving. Tel Aviv life was it for me. I was signed up for the army, ready to go. And literally my family did everything they can to bribe me. And so, okay, fine. And then that's how it happens. Like I went back to America, and the only way to get back was becoming super religious. So that's how I got back in. Right? But life in Tel Aviv in Israel is so vibrant amongst young Israelis. How has that been affected? How have Israelis compensated and coped? People who are so used to really outgoing social life. How have they coped with the situation? Shani.
Well, I can talk about Haifa and less about Tel Aviv, but in Israel in general. Again, a challenge. Everything is different now. You can't have meetings, dates, anything out in public unless it's in a public park or out in nature. And even that in certain times was not possible. So much less social. It's very sad, actually. Omer said he's enjoying the vacation time. But I do too, because in hotels you work in Shishi Shabbat also over weekends. Right. So I really enjoyed that time, but you can't enjoy it because you want to sit in the sun and enjoy a nice espresso, and you can't even have that. So you just take coffee on takeaway, and I think that's like the best.
Right. And as Israelis are so tech savvy, as we know, startup nation, have dating apps like taken off? Are people having Zoom dates? Is that popular, or is Israelis like, nah, zelo amiti, I'm not, forget it?
I think it's a very funny phenomenon, because once COVID-19 kicked in, all the guys in the dating apps wanted to rush up the dates, and on the first or second date wanted to invite the girl to his house, because COVID is outside, we can't go for a coffee, and all the girls became extremely neurotic about the disease. So, but actually, a personal story, my girlfriend and I met about almost a year ago, during the first day of the COVID. And it was very challenging for us not to. Both of us used to go out a lot for a coffee, for a beer, right. And I have I don't know how to say it in English, b'diavad. I have to be very grateful for it, because we had a lot of time for long discussions and to really meet each other. And now we're living together, and hopefully I will remain optimistic, as Shani said.
Okay, the word you're looking for is in retrospect, right?
I will write it down
after the fact, right?
Okay. But I have to say, there's something not natural about starting to date someone, because I started to date someone during the last year, and starting to date him, and it starts from home, which usually comes in a later stage. Right. It's an unnatural process, because you meet the person on certain situations and that you wouldn't have unless COVID. So like our first date wasn't like 2 or 3 hours in a restaurant. It was like a full day in his home. So everything is very unnatural.
Right. We actually had a program about dating during COVID, and it's interesting because one of the psychologists we had talked about this, that normally you in the beginning you can present a facade, and it's limited and it's safe and it's guarded, and here you are, even on Zoom, you're in someone's house, like you're in someone's personal space, And on the one hand, you can actually get to know a person much more accurately that way, and the conversations could actually be turn very personal very quickly, which is something that I believe. I mean, I've heard this from many people, especially in New York City, that the dating dynamic has changed, and conversations actually can be more real much more quickly. And so, you can busy yourselves with lots of activities in a normal dating scene, and here kind of you get to the punch. And from my perspective, people are getting more serious later and later in life as the age is, as it goes. I'm personally rooting that we pull that back and people start getting serious younger again. That's my own personal perspective, but definitely the conversations have become more meaningful. Do you think, though, before we have to tune out here, what do you think can Israelis and Americans can Israelis and Americans, can their relationship work? Is that a good mix? Omer, what do you think? Because here we have lots of American Jews that are watching this, young professionals. We're an international world. Really, the dating world shouldn't be limited to your location once Corona ends. And I'm a big proponent. We're around the world. You find someone that you like. It's a small world. We can work that part out. But what do you think, Omer? You think Americans and Israelis are a good mix or not so good?
They can be an amazing mix, but they have to have a solid plans about their future, especially about their geographical future.
Doesn't every Israeli really want to live in New York City? Isn't that true?
I'm representing 7 million Jews, so I'm not going to answer it. I don't know.
Would you move if your girlfriend said, "That's it, Omer, we'll go to New York"? Would you leave?
Not for $1 million.
Beautiful. But for her, you would.
She wouldn't ask it.
Say the right thing. Oh, excellent answer. Excellent. I wouldn't be serious with a woman who would ask such a silly question.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Shani, what do you think?
I agree with Omer. I can go live somewhere else for a year or two for a shlichut or whatever, but Israel is home. Is where the heart is, where the family is. I would never leave it. I would never yeredet from Israel.
Right, descend from Israel. How do you think we can get Jews that don't live in Israel to feel the same way? Because I didn't grow up feeling the same way at all. And having lived in Israel for over 8 years myself, I feel that way. My wife and I feel that way very deeply. And we are desperate to come back. There are certain realities in life, of course, but we miss it, every day. What do you think we can do? How can we get more people to feel this way? I mean, you guys are both. That's what Olami leadership is. This is what you're doing, trying to figure out how to get that message out, even to Israelis, that they shouldn't leave.
Right. I think programs like Olami and like Taglit Birthright are excellent. You meet them in a young age where they can still make changes for life. As you said, less situations that are limiting. And I think those are great programs to make them form their opinion and feel about Israel.
Great. Any parting words, Omer?
Yeah, I think just let them have their first visit in Israel. And from there on, it's an advertisement that sells itself.
Yeah. Well, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, we'll be able to all get back there very, very soon. I do want to wish you a Chag Hashem Sameach, a very happy Passover. And I think, this is in the first thing we say in the Haggadah is that anyone that is hungry should come and eat. Anyone that needs a Seder should come and have the Seder. And even though on a normal year, you have your invitations and you have your guest lists, and I believe that in Israel you're able to have more people at your Seder than you had last year because things are opening up much more rapidly now. But still, you have your list. But the truth is, we begin the Seder night by saying, "This my table, the meal that I'm having, it's for any Jew in the world. There's no you're invited, you're not invited, you're like me, you think like me. Lo mishaneh. This doesn't make a difference. That the before we start talking about the history and start feeling it, we have to get one thing clear. The Jews around the world are all one, and we're all in this together. And we all have to understand that any single Jew is welcome in my house, at my door, at my Seder table. On the night when I talk about the privilege and the beauty of being a Jew and part of the Jewish people, when I look at our history with Ready Omer, hindsight, when I look back and I say, unbelievable. We were in slavery for 210 years, 400 years of downfall, 210 years of torment, 87 years of abject slavery. And we look back and say, aha, I see there was a reason. I see there was a purpose. I can see a little bit into God's design. And I see that if we didn't go through that, we would never have survived and never have continued and accomplished what we accomplished. I see that made us a people, and it made us a nation, and it made us connected in ways that we can never run away from, and we need to cherish and we need to love. So that's what we have to understand going into our Pesach Seder. Doesn't matter dati lo dati religious, where you are, where you live, what languages you speak, right? We're part of a people with a history. We're going to eat the history, drink the history, live the history, and celebrate that. And in this talk, I thank you for coming, because we're doing our part in bringing the world together, even when the natural world is keeping us apart. We're doing what we can to come close and make that connection stronger than it was before. Bezrat Hashem, we'll be together very, very, very soon. Shani and Omer,
thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
True words of freedom.
Yeah. Chag Sameach. And just listening or watching out there, remember, we do have subsidized Shabbat meals for you. It can click with a click. You can order from 2 of our great caterers with custom meals delivered right to your house. Okay, not for Pesach, for Passover right now, but don't forget that that's there. We set it up for you. Please avail yourself of that. So with a little bit of internet work activity, you have a beautiful Shabbat meal. Okay, and God willing, we'll all have Shabbat together. Shani and Omer, I'm looking forward to that time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
See you in Israel soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Here we go now.